Which crazy Mizuno shoe is the right one for you? The Wave Rebellion Pro 2 or the Wave Rebellion Pro 3? Today, we break them down. What's up everybody, I'm Eric McIntyre, aka Rad Dad Bod. You're watching Rad Dad Bod TV, where we review running shoes. Today we're going to be talking about the Wave Rebellion Pro 3 versus the Wave Rebellion Pro 2, and if it's your first time watching one of my reviews, you may notice some timestamps below. Feel free to jump around to the various parts of the review, but if you do so, I would sure appreciate if you came back and watched the full thing when you get a sec, as I put a lot of time and effort into these videos. And if you haven't already subscribed, hit that subscribe button, turn on notifications so you get notified every time I drop a video, which is typically Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, but to start off the new year, we've been doing daily videos. And if you like what you see today, I would sure appreciate if you hit that like button and leave a comment. Let me know what you enjoyed, or let me know what I could be doing better to make these more informational or enjoyable, whichever you prefer. Now, before I get into the details of these two shoes, I'm going to give some disclaimers and disclosures, which are that I was provided the 3 for free, but I did pay for the 2. Regardless, no one watches these videos beforehand. No one gives me a script, talking points, anything along those lines. All thoughts are entirely my own, and I was not paid for this video, nor am I ever paid for any of my YouTube reviews or YouTube comparisons. With that out of the way, let's talk about the intended use of these two shoes. The Wave Rebellion Pro Series is the marathon racing shoe from Mizuno. It's made to go fast, and it's made to cover 26.2. Now, that being said, as with any super shoe, you can certainly take these out for speed workouts, tempo workouts, long run workouts, whatever you prefer, but at the end of the day, they are made primarily for racing, and that's how we're going to speak to them today for the most part. Now, from a pricing standpoint, both of these came in at $250, which again, I think last year was maybe a little bit more expensive for a racing shoe, but this year we're seeing most shoes come out in the 250 plus range, and so 250 is kind of that lower end of super shoe category now. And obviously with the release of the Pro 3, the Pro 2 is now going to be on sale. I'm not sure exactly for how much, but I would guess that you could get it for under $200, maybe $170, $180. So if you're looking for a good shoe at a discount, then the Pro 2 may be available for you. From a specs perspective, the 3 comes in at 7.7 ounces and 218 grams, and the 2 came in at 7.2 ounces and 204 grams. So this is the rare instance where last year's model actually is lighter than this year's model, and I'm not 100% sure why they went about it that way, because like I said, most brands are trying to get lighter overall, but I have a feeling that it has to do with the stack. Talking about that stack, the 3 comes in at 61 in the heel, 57 in the forefoot, and a 4mm heel to toe drop. Meanwhile, the 2 comes in at 48 in the heel, 46 in the forefoot, and a 2mm heel to toe drop. But both of these shoes are World Athletics legal, because that's part of the rationale for that crazy cutout in the heel. That is where they actually measure the shoe from. And so even though you have crazy stack height, technically from where they're measuring around the heel, it still sits under 40 millimeters. Now, from a fit perspective, the fit did change from year to year for me. So the 3 is going to be a little bit narrow in the forefoot, but otherwise fits pretty standard, maybe a little bit roomy in the toe box. But the 2 I found was actually fairly wide fitting in the midfoot, and I would say standard to accommodating in the toe box and the heel. And so the 2 was actually a lot more accommodating overall in fit. Now, lengthwise, I would say both fit true to size. I would not size up or size down in either. Moving to the uppers, both of these have an engineered mesh, but you can see that the take on engineered mesh is a little bit different, with the 3, I think, being a little bit more breathable, and I think that the upper may be a little bit more lightweight as well. Now, when it comes to the upper, I had a lot of trouble in the 2 getting lockdown in the shoe. And I felt like the upper kind of bunched up in various areas. So while it was breathable and the shoe was maybe a little bit more accommodating in fit, it was really, really hard to get lockdown in it. And it made it difficult to kind of lock in, especially with that aggressive geometry. So it left me feeling a little bit insecure. Meanwhile, in the 3, you can get some good lockdown. And then the other thing to note is you can actually do a runner's knot in the 3 where you couldn't in the 2. So I wonder with the 2, if I had had a runner's knot option, if I would have felt a little bit better about it. But then more narrow midfoot in the 3 plus the runner's knot option does give you better overall lockdown than the 2, and I felt like the upper was actually a pretty significant improvement in the shoe overall. Now, both of them have short tongues, which is kind of annoying, but as far as just overall comfort and breathability, I find that 3 has a level up over the 2. Now, neither of them have a ton of cushion, but you can see both have that slight cushion there in the heels, just kind of the classic pads there, but I felt like the geometry, you can see that the geometry of the 3, I feel like it just curves in a little bit better, where the 2, it was just a little bit sloppy in the heel. And so again, I feel like the fit overall of the 3 is just better overall. Both of them, I did have some kind of hitting of the toes or rubbing of the toes in the toe box, and I think that's more because of the aggressive nature of the shoe and the angle that they kind of perform at, as opposed to the uppers themselves. But I would really like to see a gusseted tongue in the 4 whenever the 4 does come out, because I find that the lockdown of shoe is just 10 times better when you have a fully gusseted tongue, and give us a slightly longer tongue so that when we use the runner's knot, that we're not getting lace bite on top of our ankles there. Now moving to the midsoles, this was a pretty big change as well. So in the 3, they use Mizuno Energy XP, which I believe, I'm not 100% sure, but I believe is a TPEE based foam, or a nitrogen infused supercritical TPEE foam. Meanwhile, in the 2, it was a dual density midsole. So you had Mizuno Energy Light Plus, which is a PEBA based foam up top, and then you had Mizuno Energy Light, which is a nylon based foam in the bottom. So you had kind of a firmer, more responsive foam on bottom, a lighter, more responsive foam up top. And the sensation between the 2, oh, and both do have a carbon fiber wave plate, so they're both carbon fiber plated. You can see it through the midsole there, or the outsole there. But I found that the 2, though it was fast, it required you to put a lot of force into the ground, a lot of force to get kind of that energy back and that kickback, right? And I think that was probably because of that, you know, Energy Light, that nylon base, kind of firmer, slightly firmer, more stable foam. I don't feel like the shoe was super stable though, so I'm not sure if they just felt like it would be a little bit too out of control with full PEBA foam, and so they wanted to give you the extra support. But I do wonder if, I mean, again, the shoe's already going to be inherently unstable. You might as well go full PEBA. And that's kind of what they did over here on the 3, is they went full, you know, TPEE, I believe, or full Energy XP within the shoe, but then they widened the base a little bit. So I found that the width of the shoe, or the base of the shoe, feels just a little bit more. You can see it kind of there in the forefoot, definitely there in the midfoot as well. So even though you had a more responsive foam and you have more of the foam underfoot, it is a little bit wider, so you're going to get a little bit more stability, but both of the shoes are very, very much unstable just because of the aggressive nature. I found that the geometry of the 2 was maybe a little bit more forgiving, because you don't have quite as aggressive of a cutout there, and you don't have quite as aggressive of a stack height, but really both of these shoes, they're built for 4-foot strikers. So I could get away with kind of more of those tempo workouts in the 2, but I still couldn't race like longer distances in it. With the 3, the sweet spot for me is like short, fast intervals. I love the feel of the shoe popping off the ground. It's very responsive, it's very bouncy. It's up there with the fastest shoes in the market, where it makes those fast paces feel effortless, versus you can get really fast in this shoe, but you do have to put a lot of force into the ground. Now moving to the outsoles, honestly, I think we're dealing with pretty much the same thing here. It's the G3 rubber compound in the banded kind of setup, and I found that it performs phenomenal overall. Like, I really, really like the grip here. You get the cutouts with the banded kind of geometry, or the banded pattern there, so you do shed some weight, but these perform great even on wet roads and slick surfaces. So obviously they're not going to do great on ice. No shoe is going to do great on ice unless it's spiked, but these both compete up there with some of the best outsoles on racing shoes, in my opinion. Now, as far as which is my pick, for me, I'm going Wave Rebellion Pro 3. I feel like the foam and the upper and just the overall experience is a notch above where the 2 was. I felt like the 2, there was just not enough bounce, not enough fun, not enough just like return in it for me, at least with my running form and with my running economy, right? So the 3, it does, although it's more aggressive, it's less forgiving than the 2. I find that it gives me that extra speed I'm looking for. It gives me that extra pop. So while the 2 is a good shoe, I just felt like there were other options for me depending on the pace I was running in. But when we're talking like short, fast intervals, this is going to be one of my top shoes, regardless of brand, regardless of rotation. This feels phenomenal with those short intervals and short bursts. But at the end of the day, again, different strides, different shoes. So it's going to come down to preference, but I think that Mizuno made the 3 a lot more of a true super shoe, especially with the foam there versus the kind of the dual density in the 2. Now, just some final thoughts on these 2. Mizuno has made major strides in the market over the last few years and really has innovated, and they just keep coming out with more and more, and there's a lot of more exciting shoes coming from them this year still. Typically, when it comes to shoes, I recommend that if you're just getting into it, you go with last year's model, because the updates aren't super significant. significant. This is the year where Mizuno made major changes to the shoe, and they are fairly significant, and you're going to notice it almost immediately when you put on the shoe. So sure, if you're looking at a budget racing option, the 2 may be there for you, but I do think it's worth the price jump this year to go to the 3. Now, if you're still watching, I sure appreciate you. Feel free, leave a comment, let me know what you've enjoyed so far. And if you did enjoy it, please go ahead and hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, and turn on notifications so you get notified every time I drop a video. And as always, to round us out, I'll leave you with the question, which is, what do you need to see in an update for you to consider buying the new model instead of last year's discounted model? Let me know in the comments below. Thanks, everybody.